Woman, listen carefully. Sometimes the loudest sound in your life is silence. That silence you feel right now is not abandonment, it is attention. It is heaven waiting for you to recognize that you have just crossed a line that few ever reach. You passed the test. The things that used to break you don't break you anymore. The things that used to control you don't control you anymore. You outlasted what was sent to destroy you. And now God is saying, pay attention because I am trying to reach you. Every test you faced was not about the pain. It was about the proof. You had to prove to yourself, to the enemy, and to the destiny on your life that you could detach from what does not belong to your future. That is why certain people walked away. That is why certain doors closed. That is why certain emotions you once drowned in are now beneath your feet. It was never about loss. It was about elevation. Detachment is not rejection, woman. It is graduation. Do you know what true strength is? It is not in how tightly you can hold on, but in how gracefully you can let go. A strong woman is not defined by what she keeps, but by what she refuses to keep when it no longer aligns with her calling. That is why you had to cry. That is why you had to walk away. Because God was teaching you that your worth does not live in who stayed or who left. Your worth is eternal, untouched by the shifting seasons of people's loyalty. And now you stand in a sacred moment. The storm has passed, and what remains is silence. But that silence is not empty. It is pregnant with instruction. God whispers after the storm because he doesn't compete with chaos. He whispers because only those who pass the test can hear him clearly. Pay attention, woman. The whisper you hear now carries the blueprint for your next assignment. Do not confuse the enemy's test with God's test. The enemy tests your attachment. God tests your obedience. The enemy wants to see what you will cling to, but God wants to see if you will let go when he asks. What you release in obedience becomes the very proof that you are ready for the weight of destiny. And here is the sign of your growth. You can feel everything, yet be controlled by nothing. That is maturity. That is power. To love without begging, to care without depending, to weep without being weakened. This is the mastery of a woman who has detached her emotions from the chains of manipulation. This is the evidence that you are finally free. So when heaven looks at you now, it does not see a broken woman. It sees a trusted woman. You passed the test. And because you passed, you are being positioned. Promotion is never given to the attached. It is given to the free. What God took from you was only to see if he could trust you. What he is about to give to you will prove that he can. Every test you face is never random. It is a divine filter designed to separate what belongs to your destiny from what was only temporary. When God allows you to be tested, he is not trying to break you. He is trying to reveal you. The test exposes what is weak in you so it can be removed, and it reveals what is strong in you so it can be trusted. That is why some situations kept repeating in your life, because they were not about the circumstances, they were about your attachments. The enemy wanted you tied down, but God needed to see if you could stand free. Passing the test does not mean you came out without scars. It means the scars no longer control you. It means the pain lost its power to define you. The moment you walked away from what you thought you could never live without, you proved that your life is no longer ruled by dependency, but by destiny. You proved that what once had power over your emotions no longer has permission to dictate your future. That is why some people do not understand you anymore. They are still measuring you by your old test, not realizing you have already graduated. God uses tests as filters because he cannot allow what is contaminated to enter into what is consecrated. If you had carried old attachments into your new season, they would have corrupted your vision. So he tested you. He stripped you. He pressed you, not to weaken you, but to separate you. And now, because you passed, you are lighter, you are freer, and you are ready for what he has prepared. Every test was a door disguised as a storm. And by surviving it, you stepped into proof that you are truly chosen. Detachment is often misunderstood as rejection, but in truth, it is a divine elevation. When God begins to pull you away from people, places, and patterns, it is not because you are unworthy. It is because you are being prepared for a higher level of purpose. There are seasons when he disconnects you, not to leave you empty, but to clear the noise that distracts you from your assignment. Many times, the attachments you fight to hold on to are the very things keeping you from seeing who you really are. God removes them so you can breathe in the atmosphere of destiny without contamination. It takes maturity to recognize that not every closed door is an enemy attack. Some closed doors are divine protection. Some separations are actually promotions. You may feel the sting of loss in the moment, but when the fog clears, you will realize that God was not taking something from you. He was lifting you above it. Detachment is God saying, what was enough for yesterday cannot carry you into tomorrow. And if you insist on holding on to what He has released, you anchor yourself to a season that has already expired. True detachment is not the absence of love. It is the presence of clarity. You can still care, you can still honor, but you no longer allow yourself to be imprisoned by dependency. You are free to love without being enslaved, to serve without being drained, to give without being diminished. That is the kind of strength that makes a woman unshakable. Detachment elevates you because it recenters your identity in God alone. When you no longer need approval to validate your worth, you step into the rare dimension of freedom where destiny begins to unfold without hindrance. Detachment is one of the greatest indicators that God is moving you into a new dimension of life. It is not rejection, it is elevation. When God begins to detach you, He is not punishing you, He is pruning you, He is cutting away what cannot survive where you are going. Many times the very things we try to cling to are the very things that keep us small. God knows that if He allows you to carry every person, every emotion, and every distraction into your future, it will suffocate the greatness He placed inside you. So He begins to pull you away. He creates distance. He allows separation, not because you are unloved, but because you are chosen. There are moments when detachment feels painful because it feels like loss, but in reality, it is gain. The people who left, the opportunities that slipped away, the places you can no longer remain, these are not signs of rejection, they are signs of alignment. God is aligning your environment with your assignment. He is making sure that nothing foreign, nothing toxic, and nothing expired contaminates what He is about to birth in you. Detachment is God's way of saying, you are bigger than this, and I am calling you higher. It is important to understand that detachment does not mean you stop loving. It means you stop depending. You can love someone and still release them. You can honor a season and still outgrow it. When you detach, you are not abandoning, you are ascending. You are choosing to place your identity, your peace, and your purpose in God's hands, rather than in the unstable grip of people or circumstances. That kind of freedom is what makes a woman unstoppable, because her destiny is no longer tied to what she has lost, but to the God who is leading her forward. True strength is not seen in how tightly you can hold on, but in how gracefully you can let go. A woman's power is not measured by her ability to cling to what is familiar, but by her courage to release what no longer serves her assignment. Life will always present situations, relationships, and opportunities that feel comfortable, yet quietly drain your purpose. Strength is revealed when you no longer beg for what God has already dismissed, when you no longer try to resurrect what heaven has buried. Letting go is not weakness, it is wisdom. There is a kind of confidence that rises in you when you discover that your value is not tied to what you keep. You do not have to hold on to people to prove your worth, and you do not have to fight to preserve something that has already expired. The very act of releasing is proof that you trust God more than your emotions. It shows that you are anchored in destiny rather than dependency. Walking away from what once defined you means you have grown into the woman God always saw in you. A woman who refuses to be enslaved by fear, guilt, or loneliness. The truth is, what you refuse to let go of can become the very thing that limits you. When you cling to the old, your hands are too full to receive the new. Strength is shown in the decision to unclench your grip, even when it hurts, because you believe that what God has prepared is greater than what you are leaving behind. That is why some of the most powerful women are those who have mastered the art of release. They can love deeply, yet move on boldly, knowing that obedience to God is always more important than attachment to comfort. God often chooses to speak most clearly after the storm has passed. When chaos surrounds you, when emotions rage, and when your heart is torn in many directions, his voice seems distant. But the moment you endure the test and the storm quiets, you find yourself in a silence that is not empty, but sacred. That silence is the space where his whisper carries the weight of divine instruction. He does not compete with noise because his voice is not meant to fight for attention. It is meant to be discerned by those who have been refined. When you pass through the test, you step into a place where distraction is stripped away and the clarity of his whisper can finally reach you. It is in those quiet seasons where you feel cut off that God begins to reveal the blueprints for your next assignment. He will not shout them in the storm because storms test your endurance, not your direction. The whisper comes after the endurance has been proven. The storm was designed to see if you could remain faithful, but the silence is designed to see if you are attentive. A whisper demands focus. You cannot hear it if you are restless, desperate for noise, or addicted to movement. You must be still enough to recognize that heaven is trying to download new instructions into your spirit. The greatest transitions in life happen not in moments of celebration, but in moments of stillness. It is when everything seems quiet, when you feel like nothing is happening, that God is often speaking the loudest. That whisper will carry strategy, wisdom, and direction, but only to the woman who has endured enough storms to finally value silence. Passing the test brings you into that dimension where God can trust you to hear him in ways others cannot. The difference between the enemy's test and God's test lies in intention. The enemy tests you to trap you, but God tests you to trust you. The enemy wants to see what you are still attached to, because whatever you cling to can be used to control you. If you cannot release it, it owns you. This is why temptations and distractions often come wrapped in what you desire most. They are designed to expose where your loyalties truly lie. The enemy studies your attachments because he knows that if he can keep you tied to them, he can keep you from walking fully in purpose. God's test, however, is different. He will ask you to release what is precious, not because he wants to deprive you, but because he wants to see if your faith is in him or in what you hold. That is why Abraham was asked to place Isaac on the altar. God did not want Isaac's life. He wanted Abraham's obedience. Likewise, when God asks you to let go of a relationship, a position, or even a dream, it is not loss. It is an opportunity to prove that you trust him more than the gift. He tests your obedience because obedience is the foundation of stewardship. And without stewardship, you cannot handle the weight of destiny. When you cling to something tighter than you cling to God, it becomes an idol, even if it looks innocent. But when you surrender it back to him, you prove that nothing holds your heart higher than he does. The enemy will always test your attachment, but God will always test your obedience. And when you pass God's test, you gain not just freedom from what you released, but the authority to handle what he is about to place in your hands. Emotional mastery is one of the clearest signs of spiritual maturity. It does not mean you stop feeling. It means your feelings no longer control you. You can be deeply moved and yet remain unshaken. You can experience pain and still choose peace. You can face rejection and yet continue walking in purpose. That level of maturity is not natural. It is spiritual. It comes from realizing that your emotions are a gift, but they were never meant to be your guide. They are indicators, not dictators. When God matures you, he teaches you how to feel without being enslaved. The strength of a woman is revealed in her ability to stand steady in the middle of emotional storms. She can cry and yet still make wise decisions. She can hurt and yet not retaliate. She can love and yet not be manipulated. This is not suppression. It is transformation. It means she has detached her identity from the unstable tides of human approval and anchored it in the unchanging truth of who God says she is. Such a woman cannot be easily swayed because her emotions are submitted to her spirit and her spirit is submitted to God. Emotional mastery does not strip you of compassion. It actually increases it. Because when you are no longer consumed by your own emotional chaos, you can see clearly, love freely, and serve faithfully without being drained. This is the evidence of growth. When you no longer allow anger, fear, or loneliness to govern your steps, but instead let wisdom, patience, and discernment lead you. It is a sign that you have been processed by God. You are no longer a prisoner to your feelings, but a steward of them. And that stewardship becomes a mark of true authority and influence. Every test you endure is not just a struggle, it is a setup for promotion. God never allows you to walk through trials without purpose. What you survive becomes the qualification for what you are about to carry. When you pass a test, it is not just about overcoming difficulty, it is about proving that you can be trusted with greater responsibility. God cannot place weight on weak foundations. So every season of pressure, every storm, and every moment of detachment was preparing you for a higher dimension of authority. Promotion in the kingdom is not given because of talent, appearance, or opportunity. It is given because of faithfulness. If you were faithful in tears, faithful in silence, faithful when misunderstood, faithful when nothing made sense, then heaven marks you as ready. Passing the test shows that your obedience is stronger than your emotions and your faith is stronger than your fear. That is the woman God promotes. He does not promote because of popularity. He promotes because of endurance. Sometimes what you lose is actually your evidence that you are qualified. When something you depended on was stripped away and you still chose to trust God, you revealed that you can be trusted with more. Promotion is always connected to release. God will never elevate someone who is still clinging to expired attachments because elevation requires freedom. The test removed the weight you could not carry into your next level. The test purified your motives and refined your focus. So when you pass, you don't just survive, you graduate. And graduation means you are now ready to handle what others could not. The very things that once broke you are now proof that you have been strengthened. And that strength is what positions you for the greatness God had prepared all along. Woman, hear this with all the weight of heaven behind it. What you just walked through was not random, it was required. The fire was not sent to destroy you, it was sent to reveal you. The silence was not to punish you, it was to prepare you. You have been tested and you have passed. And now God is calling you to lift your head, dry your tears, and recognize that you are no longer who you were when the storm began. You are stronger, wiser, and freer than you have ever been. This is your moment to pay attention. Do not look back to what has been stripped away, for it was only preparation for what is about to be placed in your hands. The same God who required you to let go is the same God who is about to release what is greater, purer, and perfectly aligned with your destiny. You are